Perfect. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Fake Accents Unite. We're up to episode 120 now, would you believe it? I am joined, as always, by my co-host with the most toast. Yes, that's right, the co-host with the most toast. That's the Britisher. Good evening, sir.
I have so much toast you wouldn't believe it.
Buttered on both sides.
You know, I discovered something when you were getting ready to go live here.
Whilst I was dressing
and that is that you've definitely watched Red Dwarf once or twice too often. Or possibly the Britass Empire.
I have not watched the Britass Empire.
It must be Red Dwarf then.
Red Dwarf.
Must be solely the fault of Red Dwarf.
Go on.
Because you have that habit once in a while of saying, marvellous.
Marvellous!
And yes,
oh no!
It just reminds me of someone with an H on his forehead. What can I say?
No, Britisher, no,
He's
please.
Not speaking to me anymore now.
Please, no, sweet Lord above. Marvellous, that's exactly where it comes from.
If I'm not mistaken, he does do that.
He does do that, and I hadn't realised, and I adopted I adopted the use of the term marvellous. And I didn't know where it had come from. It was just something I started saying. And I only started saying it after that very strange time last year where I watched all of Red Dwarf 5 times in a row back to back. So, yeah, perhaps.
See, it's for people like me to point these things out live on air.
To exacerbate my suffering at your hands, Britisher. I feel you've got a good grip around me there.
I have to get some revenge for the Uwuisha.
Uwuisha, which,
yes.
It gets worse, you see, because Uwuisha is currently on screen.
You have not possibly put... You couldn't be so villainous, surely.
I may indeed be the villain of which you speak.
Have you realised that it is now actually someone who has adopted the moniker on Twitter?
Yes, and in Discord. In fact, 2 people have, as far as I'm aware so far, a whole 2 people who have taken on this image as their profile picture, unironically, and I hope are spamming
you are out there, people. I want you to be assured of my deep personal hatred.
Get your Uwuishas out in the chat. That's what I say to that. Oh my goodness. There we go.
And of course, yes, you do have your Uwuisha merchandise, don't you?
Indeed. Uwuisha is now fully purchasable. I think he looks best on the mug, but you can also get him on as a sort of breast pocket on the old T-shirt. I did try and look to get it done on an actual, a polo neck or something like that, but unfortunately Teespring doesn't do that. But you can find the link to that in the description if you're so inclined. But I just think it's too good to pass up. The chap who created it has a chap called Enigmatic. Declared it to be one of the most cursed things he's ever done, and he's both proud and very sad about it.
And ashamed.
Yes. I don't know about
deeply ashamed.
I don't know about shamed. But apparently I need a new piece of merchandise, a tea egg in this shape. A tea egg?
A tea egg? Yeah, well, why not? Are you familiar what a tea egg is?
I mean, I'm aware of what tea-stained eggs are, but, a tea egg?
It's basically something in which to keep loose tea. So it's kind of almost like the metal version of a tea bag.
Yes, I know these, but I've never heard them described as a tea egg before. Perhaps that's just me. Yeah, of course. Just a loose-leaf tea strainer.
Poor innocent child.
A loose-leaf tea strainer. That's all I've got. But apparently we could make one in the shape of a Uwuisha, you see, and sell them by the bucket load. That's the theory.
See. Yes, that's the theory.
How would you feel about... I mean, you'd get one, wouldn't you, Britisher? Just to dunk a little version of your own little kawaii, sort of Japanese-styled face into your mug. I mean, for most people, they're doing it for a laugh, but for you, you'd be drowning it in the tea. so that it never again
has
surfaces.
Left the stream.
The Britisher
has left the stream.
Well, welcome everybody. With that shameless shilling and sleight aside, we are. I know. I'm sorry, May. You can't access the Awursha emote unless you become a channel member for as little as £2 a month. But the welcome to everyone. I can see the regulars in the chat. I can see Suchko, and I can see Meh. I can see Admiral Bees, Muck06, Jesus Fried Christ, Yiz the Eunuch has turned up today, Mr. Gently Benevolent as all. Welcome all. As you may have noticed, the title of today's stream is "What is the most British thing?" Obviously, this is not going to dominate the entirety of the stream, but it will. We're obviously going to talk about the new COVID proposals. And the Merseyside police fuck up. That's going to be fun. And a little bit possibly about Japanese has created something like a Minister of Sadness or something like that. So that'll be interesting, won't it? Okay. Well, I put the question to Twitter. What do they consider to be the most British thing? Let me get the news viewer up so that everyone can see what I can see. What is the most British thing you can think of? Some of these replies have more likes than the question itself. Bad form, NSO followers. Bad form. Let's see what we've got here. Oh yes, I really ought to edit this viewer so that for Twitter if it's there. I shall just expand it a little bit for people to see. 1 second. And Britisher, don't you worry. I shall get you a nice. There we go. I'm now sharing my screen in the Discord, so you can follow along as well. There you go. All you need to do is click my name and click watch. All right. So. We have various options here. We're going to go through them in turn, and the chat is going to rate them on how well they think, and we're going to talk about them as they come up and whether or not they are truly British or just simply some kind of strange Austrian degeneracy, right? How do you feel about that, British? Are you down with the sickness?
Well, I don't know. I right now I am switching onto the actual YouTube stream because looking at this on Discord, I can't decipher a thing.
Okay, that's not great, but I will disconnect from Discord then and just allow you to follow.
I'm now just waiting for some robot owl to get through the advert.
A robot? Why do you not have an ad blocker, Britisher?
Okay, I think I've got a bit of a better chance now. Just shut myself up as I'm talking. There we are.
So okay. British is following on as well. All right. So, what is the most British thing you can think of? Option 1, tutting. Is it a British thing to tut? I always thought of it as more of a kind of, well, aside from it being something that posh ladies did, something that was done by Eastern European mothers and Russians. I
think tutting is a sort of a universal thing, isn't it? It's nothing quite like a French waiter tutting.
Yes, in France the men tut. That is.
But yeah, I think generally tutting. I can see where you're going. A sort of more sort of the lone tut of the weather as you stand at the bus station. Something like that is very, very British. But
yes.
As such, I wouldn't say tutting is British in itself.
No, very disappointing. And this is why, of course, it's only got the singular like. So there is that. Chat is being very degenerate right now. I will ignore that. Dreary skies is British? I don't think so. Britain has a very diverse and exciting weather pattern that you...
Well, diverse is indeed, I think, what applies. When it comes to dreary skies, once again, I can see where you're coming from, Mr. Salieri. But I think the true Mozart would have said dreary skies was something Scandinavian.
Really? I thought the Scandies were kind of renowned for their air quality and blue clear skies. You know, what with being near all that ocean.
Blue clear skies. I think they have equally rotten weather. I think, and then on top of that, they don't get a lot of sunlight.
Any Scandies in the chat who can clear up this mess? That's what I want to know. Are you dreary or not? It was interesting. I was a chap
the suicide rate up in Scandinavia due to lack of exposure to sunlight and whatever is somewhat spectacular, is it not?
Their suicide rate?
Yes.
Good grief. Well, that took a dark turn. We went from the sky's a bit grey to it causes Scandinavians to chuck themselves off buildings.
Pretty much, yes. And also it has some positives. I mean, it leads to the Finns just not caring anymore, and therefore just driving around the countryside like a wild beast, which therefore then leads to them having a rather good crop of rally drivers.
Who we then go on to arrest, of course.
Do we?
Yes, the rally which goes around the UK, and we basically drive around a dirt track, then go along another stretch of road, and then go to another dirt track, and we catch them on the speed cameras, and then the next time they come for the event, we arrest them.
Oh, I see.
And
yes.
I can't remember.
Real Finnish rally drivers, then.
Yes, and I can't remember if it was 2002-ish, 2002, 2003, and we arrested something. One of them, he'd been caught 7 times on the same day speeding down the normal stretch of road. And
I bet that wasn't him. That was just somebody. That was just 6 other people that had the same car.
And we also we arrested something like 9 of them as they went through the next time they came.
What they call it. It basically, it's no doubt loosely based on the Gumball rally. So do we call it the Gobstopper rally?
I have no idea. Gumball rally, though. That's something.
You have no idea what I'm talking about, do you?
I know what Gumball is. I used to have top trumps with Gumball cars on, but it's been a long time since I've thought about that. I have the next answer, as it were, which happens to be from a very disreputable chap on Twitter. So we're going to have to take everything that he says with a pinch of salt. This is a guy who impersonates the Britisher on Twitter, calling himself the Britisher Twee, as opposed to the official Britisher, which we know is the official handle of the Britisher. And he says, drinking tea from a Britisher tea mug.
Well, can you think of anything more British?
Drinking coffee from a Britisher tea mug.
Those are only the subversives.
They are, in fact. But haven't you? Obviously, you've driven sales with that, haven't you? Oh my! What will I ever do if you happen to be driving coffee sales? Oh no!
You, as though I would ever do such a thing.
Yes, the Britisher is a wholesome man. In fact, did you know his mug actually chops your fingers off if you attempt to put anything other than the finest tea into it?
Of course, yes.
You thought that was addressed to the chat, didn't you? You thought it was a rhetorical question. But no, objects in the mirror and advertisements may not be entirely as specified. But the Britishers mugs do in fact serve a greater purpose, but I don't know if it's the most British thing, Britisher. I just think, especially given that you're a filthy continental in British clothing, who will never be...
Of course, that makes it much, much worse.
I know, it's like you're impersonating a British person, and it's just not possible for that to be the most British thing. Her Majesty the Queen as the most British thing? Certainly she is the pinnacle of duty, and duty is very British.
You see, now you have trouble disputing another one of my great points, haven't you?
Go on. Oh, I have to dispute this. Well, Her Majesty could refer to any. I assume that being a continental, you mean Diana. In which case, no, she certainly must not be the pinnacle of the most British thing.
She has left the stream.
Has
left the stream.
The Britisher has returned, but the Britisher has returned only to leave the stream in spite. so that he could leave the stream multiple times. Of course, knowing your storied history, Britisher, Her Majesty could refer to any number of majesties. It could be Victoria you're talking about here, but I shall assume for the purposes of this that you mean Her Majesty Elizabeth II.
Of course.
Who, to be fair, is one of the things, but does she and will she transcend all time as the most British thing? I feel like she has been an exemplary monarch, and one day she will
this
pass.
is just it. I mean, I don't think you can actually specify the most British thing that then basically stands throughout time. I think all you can do is sort of throw up some things that, in the right context, given the right context, then are the most British thing. Fair?
You're always fair, Britisher. Disgustingly fair. Yes, I think that's a point. That's a point. I think we can add the Queen to the S tier. I kind of wish that I'd got like a tier list up now, where I could add each individual thing. I'd collated a list and got an image for everyone and then put them up. But all things great in hindsight and that sort of thing. But I think the Queen Elizabeth II little head on the tier list would be an S tier item for that matter. Do you know what I mean when I'm talking about a tier list, at least?
I have no idea, and I don't care.
Oh, for goodness sake. A, B, S is the top, A, B, C, D, E, and so on, right? So, E tier is generally considered the worst of the worst.
I see.
It is the detritus of answers, whereas the S tier is so good, it is the pinnacle, it is spit-shined and polished.
Beyond A.
Indeed, beyond A. Super, special, awesome. So I think tutting is definitely a kind of an E tier. Dreary Skies is a D tier. But drinking tea from a Britisher tea mug, obviously you're biased, but I'll put that in B tier. And Her Majesty can be S tier. If anybody in the chat is so inclined as to create a graphic of these things, I'll be ever so grateful. But don't feel pressured. A Spitfire. Now, I'm torn on the Spitfire.
Oh my god.
The Spitfire.
Okay, go on.
The Spitfire.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's a controversy coming up here.
The Spitfire is undoubtedly one of the greatest works of engineering that the British produced for its time, for everything else. But I think that the Hurricane is the vastly underrated and warhorse, really, of the Second World War and the British
You
Battle
feel
of
that
Britain.
the Hurricane is the kind of ugly sister that didn't get enough of the credit because the sort of beauty queen hogged all the limelight.
Yes, but I think the Hurricane did more for Britain and is more a symbol of Britishness as the kind of plucky underdog that did all the work, whilst the Spitfire also, assisted, but looked prettier and was newer.
I remember seeing a documentary once where they were actually interviewing some, sort of Battle of Britain veterans, and even one of the Hurricane pilots conceded that without the Spitfire they would have struggled. But he was quite clear. Well, the Hurricanes shot down many more planes than the Spitfires did. But he basically said, if we hadn't had the Spitfires up there, we would have had a lot more trouble with the messages.
I have no doubt that this is true. I am just describing the Hurricane as the workhorse, where, if every plane in the British fighter contingent had been a Spitfire, they would have been better off. But in terms of what the actual impact was...
Yeah. I think what you like about the Hurricane in this case is pretty much the fact that she isn't the Spitfire. So the reason you are charmed by the Hurricane is precisely because there is a Spitfire. Because the Hurricane is the not-so-glamorous one. Do you understand what I mean?
A tier it is. A tier. The Spitfire.
The Spitfire surely is an S tier.
The Spitfire. We will put it on... But is
the Spitfire is a sort of absolute ultimate symbol, surely, of the entire struggle in the Second World War.
I see. I don't want to put it in the S tier. See, I don't think the Spitfire is as much as Elizabeth II, but I think that it is still well up there. It's a symbol of Britishness. We shall put it on the line between A and S tier. How about that? There we are. It shall sit betwixt, on the fence between S and A tier, and there forever to remain.
You've managed to, in something involving me, you've managed to place something on the fence.
How would I manage to do that, British show? It's completely absurd, and would it matter anyway? I mean, who's ever associated a fence with you? You're going to have to explain this one to me, as I wasn't around when you were in 1905. But what is the London to Brighton pre-05 car race? Or motor race,
Well, it is a sort of rally of sorts, but it's more a gentle kind of tuk-tuk race, if you know what I mean. Nobody is really trying to outdo each other. And this race has been going on forever. And basically anybody with a pre-1905 car can turn up, and they all drive down to Brighton. But officially it's a race, even though I think you can imagine in a pre-1905 car it's pretty difficult to race.
I did have fun, because obviously my when I was researching yesterday's Britain, which is fully recorded and just lacks footage for me to place over it. Actually, I should get around to doing that at some point. Basically, looking at how the hackney carriages and the horse-drawn stuff were very resistant to motor vehicles coming in the early 20th century, and it is fascinating just from that perspective to see that kind of healthy camaraderie. But they used to call the motorists, the enthusiasts, what did they used to call them? Like a machinist or something like that, basically. And they used to spend their days underneath the cars because they would break down so much. And so when they would travel anywhere in particular, aside from being fairly slow, they would constantly break down if you did the wrong thing. So it was just littered with people fixing their cars on the go. And I feel like it was much more of a kind of practical hobby in that regard than it is now. It was the British shed man's hobby. The man who enjoyed tinkering in this way.
When it comes to the London to Brighton race, there is even a film called Genevieve, which again is a classic British film, which of course you will never have seen, because what classic film have you ever seen? Yes, it's quite a charming film with a lot of harmonica music in by Mr. Adler.
I've seen classic films, British, like that one. What was it? Schindler's List.
That one. What was it? Yes.
You missed the worst bit of that, where I said Schindler's List was a classic film.
Well, it is.
Yeah, I know, but like in the era of the classics that you talk about, anyway.
Well, yes, but I mean, I will grant Schindler's List classic status.
Very well. So where do you want to place that? Tier it for me, Britisher.
I would say B or C tier.
B or C tier. We shall put the London to Brighton pre-1905 car race in the C tier, squarely where it belongs.
It's something so mad, and it's something so tied to history, that you struggle to imagine what other country could do something like that.
Yes.
Because they wouldn't have the cars, and they also wouldn't have enough nutters who would, as you just described, want to spend half the race under a car fixing it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Prohibition-era America kind of comes to mind.
well, yes, but I mean that's quite a distance after 1905.
Very true.
I mean, these vehicles are quite exotic.
As I don't know anything more about it, we shall move on to the next. We have the University Boat Race. I presume you're talking about the one between Reading and Oxford. Reading
and Oxford? Well, I mean, yeah, Cambridge and Oxford.
Cambridge and Oxford as well. Sorry, I went on a riverboat, not narrowboat. I used a barge. Went on a trip down the Thames, and I went from Reading to Oxford. So that's where I just pulled that completely from. Anyway, yes, the Cambridge Oxford boat race. I definitely feel that this is something. I mean, like toffs in general, right, are a part of British heritage, society, culture, etc. You know, the kinds of people who have hand-me-down clothes for the entire time, for the entirety of their living, and intend to hand them down to their offspring and that sort of thing. But the university boat race. How much is that representative? You know, of Britain as a whole? I think this is definitely a D tier item, Britisher, I have to say, in terms of representing Britain.
I can live with a sort of a C tier. D tier, I think you're misunderestimating this, to quote George W. Bush. The one thing that particularly endears the university boat race to me is not only because it's just part of the calendar. It just comes around. It's an institution. It's a very British institution, once again. But there is, of course, also that wonderful series Jeeves and Wooster with Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry.
Indeed.
And it begins with Wooster in the dock. And he's just being sentenced for having stolen a policeman's helmet.
Yes.
And I remember you've got this judge who is sort of terribly, terribly judgmental, and what has the world come to? This is the end of civilization as we know it.
Oh, if only he
young
knew.
Hooligans have nothing better to do than to steal a policeman's helmet. And then he stops just for a moment, and with this pained expression on his face, he says, "And on the eve of the university boat race." And therefore, this thing is just sort of imprinted in my mind as something just terribly, terribly British.
Oh, very well, British. I shall have to concede. I'll give it a C tier then. You shall give, for the Jeeves and Wooster reference alone, you should move it up to the C tier. We have the Grand National, of course. Again, I don't know how much particular sports, with the exceptions of the ones we invented, can really move up because they become too partisan. You know, you've got the Grand National on here, you've got the FA Cup final, and whilst these sporting events are quintessentially British, they're things that we made come into being, and obviously are things which are heavily betted on. I think Mr. Britisher is revealing his own gambling addiction here.
Oh, of course.
He's measuring the car race, the boat race, the Grand National, the football. I tell you, he just can't keep himself out the bookies at this stage.
I mean, put it like this: the FA Cup final still brings a substantial part of the European continent to a halt. That there is an understanding that the FA Cup final is something special, much more so than in Europe their own national cup finals. They've all got cup competitions, but a hell of a lot of them will show the FA Cup final live, simply because it's the one. So it does stand out as something extra special. And the Grand National, again, has a reputation that means people over there know about it, which is much more than you can say about many of the others, the Derby or something like that. They wouldn't have heard about that. But the Grand National is truly world famous.
I think we'll lump together great British sporting events, including things like the rugby, and we'll sit them firmly in the C tier there. And we have a sort of, not a contentious one, but one I think is notable, because obviously Wimbledon gets placed in the C tier with that, but strawberries and cream at Wimbledon, and by extension a kind of Eton mess style of thing, I think definitely deserves a higher spot on the list. For those of you who don't know,
if you remember, strawberries and cream also was the dish that isn't allowed to be shown on the side of London buses.
What?
Yes.
I am unfamiliar with this particular ruling. Do expand.
Oh, yes, because, it's unhealthy foods and fattening foods,
Oh,
and
the
so
cream
many
and
calories,
sugar.
this, that, and whatever. There are certain exceptions that are being permitted, and this, that, and whatever. But so I think you can advertise curry on the side of a bus, but you can't advertise strawberries and cream, because Wimbledon run afoul of that by advertising its its dates by sort of some creative means rather than just a tennis racket or something like that on the poster on the side of it. So they put on strawberries and cream and other things that you would associate with Wimbledon, and they were then told they couldn't have strawberries and cream.
How very dare they, is what I say to that.
Yes. I think when that happened, this is quite some time ago, but when it happened, I think it got a mention on the week that was. I was irritated, let's put it like that.
I believe you were somewhat distressed by current events, yes. And finally here we have RollsRoyce aircraft engines, which I think... as
strangely topical, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. RollsRoyce aircraft engines, I think, can definitely sit up with the... I mean, it's not quite the Spitfire, but I think it's an A tier. I mean, Rolls-Royce in general, but yes, their aircraft engines in particular.
I mean, they powered the Spitfire and your Hurricane, by the way.
Indeed, I know. I'm well aware, Brish. Well aware, alongside many other
and the
marvelous
Mosquito and the Lancaster.
Yes, marvelous machines that they made and continue to make to this day. But
and
I think
the Americans had to copy them because they didn't have a motor anywhere near as good as that.
By copy, you do mean steal the designs of, yes. The Americans.
Well, I think the bureaucratic way of describing it is to say they produced them under license.
Very diplomatic of you, British, which is something you're not usually. So I'm quite impressed at your ability to restrain your hatred of the Americans across the pond. We'll move on now from fake Britisher, as this clearly is, because I wouldn't spend 20 minutes discussing the options.
You do notice the etc. at the end, that list would be considerably longer if only Twitter allowed.
Indeed, but unfortunately we can't spend all day on your options for this. So, I've got plenty more people to go through, Britisher. You are not the only person demanding...
Well, you see, I'm just trying to avoid talking about COVID again.
We
intent and stretching this out for as long as it possibly can.
We have many options. Someone has complained that you are talking primarily about English things rather than British, and I would say, and... But, the Irish, the Welsh and the Scots... have obviously contributed in some ways, but British are mentioning things which primarily demonstrated themselves in England does not make them... England is part of Britain, sir.
There is that, yes, just as Tunnock's tea cakes are British, then I get told off when I say as much.
Apparently, what you've just said is all wanky, posh southerner rubbish except the footy. And so, to avoid only talking about posh, wanky southern things, let's see what the rest of the world thinks as well. Wake Up World says, I don't know, but I'm certain it's being done in sheds. And I think, actually, the shed is a great British institution. I think a great...
Obviously, the British aren't the people to have invented the shed, or...
No,
to be exclusively
but the
British, there is some truth in that.
The British culture of the shed-based tinkerer, the man who invented
the shed culture, the shed subculture,
the man sitting with his cup of tea, tinkering with a CB radio in his shed,
until he builds a wind-up radio.
Yes, is just. Just the quintessential British shed experience that we've got there, and then you've got the kind of leisure side. We're not talking about the French summer house here. We're talking about the man, and he's got an old moth-eaten, armchair. It's like the precursor to the American man cave as well. It was the place men went to escape their wives and do the kind of male tinkering kind of things that men like to do. So there we are.
I believe the Top Gear crowd, and thereby, of course, I mean the original Top Gear crowd, not the pretend Top Gear crowd that is more than likely going to get cancelled on the BBC anyway. I think they have already done some sterling work in the promotion of the idea of the shed as something terribly British.
I think it is, and I think it is certainly true, especially for petrol heads out there, or as they used to call them, petrosexuals, before the BBC told them not to. Yes, petrol heads, definitely. I think, a great many things. I mean, Caterham, who produced the Crossfire and that sort of thing, they started in a shed. Many great British companies started in sheds. That's what I like to think. Let me see. Selling off land at King's Cross Station so that High Speed 1 and High Speed 2 can never ever meet. I don't know about that one. I've not really followed the High Speed 2 story, but there you go. Saying thank you for unacceptably bad customer service. Now, the idea of saying that it is kind of thing where the British are a kind of oxymoron in that we're both incredibly plucky, and when the chips are down, we're your man. And at the same time, we have this reputation of, oh, sorry, don't mind us, sorry, and saying thank you even when we don't mean it. Oh well, I tell you, Britisher, this meal was the worst thing I have ever consumed in my entire life. And then, of course, the serving staff comes over and say, how was your meal? You go, oh, it's fine, thank you for asking. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there is some truth in that. I think one could also one could twist that slightly, and also say that our civility and our at times campness, which the Americans always like to point out as gay, without us actually caring whether they think so or not, is more than likely also part of the whole sort of national fabric, which somehow ties into this, I think.
Yeah. The next one says, talking about the weather. Now, this is curious. Like, is this a British thing? I don't think it's a British thing. Although,
it is.
Oh, really? Well, we have this.
Yes.
We have this remarkably interesting weather system where we can go through all of the seasons of the year within the space of 4 hours. So at least our weather is interesting enough to actually be talking about.
Isn't there also some saying about it doesn't matter where two Englishmen or two Britons might meet anywhere in the world, they will always be able to talk about the weather?
Indeed, we can talk about anything we desire.
But it does stem from what you just described. Britain does have a variety of weather that makes any other nation just, lose its mind. I mean, we've all seen satellite images and whatever, how these various, high and lows kind of pass over us. And of course, no sooner has the centre passed, the wind blows from the exact opposite direction that it did previously, with all the joys that entails. So yes, you don't really get these ridiculous swings and roundabouts in continental weather. So I think more than likely the only people who should be able to equal us in that regard are possibly the Irish.
But yeah, the Irish who just happen to live just next door. Yes.
And who live also on the British Isles.
Yes.
Just don't point that out to them.
I'd say we won't mention the Isle of Man.
What's that again?
We won't mention the Isle of Man. Someone else has said, an old guy dressed in an old red coat uniform, reminding us of a great dying past. I don't know who he could possibly be referring to there, Britisher, do you?
No idea whatsoever.
None. Next says, class performatively class performativity, informing every interaction and opinion while simultaneously denying we still have a class system. I don't think we ever have denied that we have a class system. In fact, it's what makes us separate from, say, the Americans.
Well, like this, every society has a class system. What sets the British apart, really, is that they're more honest about it, and that it's therefore a sort of lived-out experience.
But this person's saying we deny. I don't think we deny at all.
Most other societies kind of try to kind of pretend that it isn't there, whereas it clearly is. I mean, don't tell me that some rapper in some ghetto in LA is in the same class as one of the Kennedys.
True.
So the American system is just as class-ridden, just about any other society is, but whereas in Britain it's much more out in the open.
But you have to remember
that's really the difference, as opposed to us being class-ridden.
Remember as well that Britain managed to reduce it to just class. I think is one of those things. There was not really any other really immutable characteristic that we really reduced it to. It's just class, and then we don't really care what you are as long as you're British, that sort of thing. And again, class is something which you can't really quantify. It just is there. And
then the social justice movement came along.
Yeah, well, there is that. Anyway, we won't go down that tangent too much, but I wouldn't say that we deny. But the class system of Britain, in terms of its Britishness, where on the tier list do we put that? I mean, we've got the S tier, we've got the Spitfire, we've got Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, we've got the sort of B tier things of British sports.
I would say it's a B tier.
You reckon it's sort of above the British sports? It's above the Grand National? It's above
that's where you put the sports. What you know. But I think I would, freed from that context that isn't mine, I would suggest a B tier.
I would suggest a B tier. I think we pop that in the B tier. Ignoring the lockdown spam, we've already gone over saying sorry. I like this one though. Trafalgar Place off of Trafalgar Street, opposite the Nelson pub, down the road from the Battle of Trafalgar pub. That building is owned by the French.
Okay.
Tailed Feature has chimed in. Obviously, people know Tailed, long-time friend of the stream. Celebrating failure. This has got 40 likes. Do we celebrate failure in Britain?
Yeah.
We know we're.
Of course we do.
We know we're rubbish.
I actually replied to that tweet.
Oh God.
In pictorial form.
I see. I've got it up here.
So yes, we do celebrate failure. We celebrate the one who, how should we say, who is game. So it doesn't really matter how battered he comes out of it at the end, or whether he's, he never wins the medal. He nonetheless made a spectacular effort.
You did the best you could, that kind of thing.
Along those lines, but I mean, when it comes to Cooper versus Ali, I mean, what did Muhammad Ali say? He hit me that hard, my ancestors in Africa felt it.
Ha! That's it. What a statement! What a statement!
But yes, but in the end, obviously, Ali was the superior boxer, and Cooper came out looking as though he's been through a mincemeat machine. But it was, it was one of those sort of glorious failures where he took on the man who was, the greatest boxing legend ever. And to a certain extent, you could sort of ask, well, how could he possibly have won? But my God, did he give it an effort?
I think it's not about celebrating failure. I think it's about supporting the plucky underdog. I think it's about pushing. And then when if that person gets up and fails, we go, fair play, great effort. And when they succeed, that success is all the more glorious because they were, not the favourite to win. That's what I think.
I know what you mean, but I think Tail has something. To be honest, there is something that we love about the underdog, and yes, I think we almost see a certain. I mean, obviously, this coming from a Scot is more than likely not a coincidence, because the Scots are dreadfully romantic people. But I think there is a certain romanticism almost about the kind of the guy who failed, but my God, did he give it a try?
The man who aimed for the stars and only reached the sky.
Along those lines.
Well, the celebration of failure then. A, B, C, D, or E tier. I think we have to give it. I think we have to give it a solid B tier, if I'm honest.
So I think so. Yes.
So there we are. There's that one. Thank you for that one, Tailed, if you're listening at all. Saying sorry again, Trafalgar said, ignoring that one, but boarding schools in general. Yeah, I don't know how much boarding school. I mean, a lot of other nations send their children to board at school in Britain, but I don't know about boarding schools.
It's a sort of world famous product in that regard.
Yeah,
as you say, lots of Arab sheikhs and whatever will send their rulers to be to a British boarding school, but it doesn't really affect a large part of the population. I mean, unlike, say, my former excellent example of the university boat race, in which only a small number of people actually get to partake, and it's very elite, and you have to be part of these elite universities and so on. But it's one of those things that every pub in the nation will have on the television when it's on. So it's something that is a shared experience, whereas boarding schools is pretty niche, I think, when it comes to the all-round shared experience in the country.
But in terms of a British phenomenon, I think like the idea of putting the child on a train to go off to boarding school is a very British
gave us
image.
Things such as Tom Brown's School Days, and of course that then led to Flashman.
Oh yes, your favourite, yes.
I have somehow managed to steer the subject back to something I want to talk about, yes.
Once again, Britisher. Okay, well, we shall put boarding schools then in D tier, I think. Not particularly British, but just British enough to make the list. Films depicting the English as evil bastards.
Yes, definitely.
Definitely.
Yes.
That's an A tier right there. Fish and chips, because this also comes up. Definitely S tier fish and chips. Let me see. We have.
Is there a particular routine to fish and chips with you, or
fish and chips?
Is it just
fish
you
and chips,
fine with anything?
Fish and chips must be. Well, I have. It's obviously it's battered cotton chips. They are proper chips, chunky, crispy. Yep. And they come in their paper wrap, and what you do is you tear that open and you put that on your plate, but you don't take away the paper. You eat it through in the paper, or you just
vinegar.
Have it in there. Add the vinegar and the ketchup, or the brown sauce, or the HP, or the Worcester sauce, depending on your taste. And then you have it like that.
You see, I can have sort of oven chips or something like that with ketchup or whatever. But if I get fish and chips from a proper fish and chip shop or whatever, it has to be malt vinegar.
Yes.
I can't have that with ketchup or anything like that.
See, I have
it's not right.
But I have it with lots of salt, lots of malt vinegar, and lots of ketchup. So that's I say lots of ketchup. It's not like a swimming pool of ketchup, but I will glaze the thing in ketchup.
And do you also have it on the fish?
I mean,
the malt vinegar.
The malt vinegar, yes.
Yes. And do you? Some fish and chip shops do this. They sell like sort of what they call Crispies or whatever. Some of the
oh yes, the
some of the batter that is sort of spits and spats of the batter that are sort of formed into little sort of crispy bits.
My local,
and they just sort of
my local place when I was growing up used to do that, and it was a mix. So you got like all of the the over fried little bits of batter, and you also got loads of bits of the over fried little chips of chips, which all mixed in together. And yes, it was terribly greasy, and you were very rich.
And given that we're talking vinegary and whatever, some people I've had it once. And it was okay. It wasn't, that spectacular. But I can see why people like it. Some people have a pickled egg with it.
I've never had a pickled egg, so I couldn't tell you.
So this is a boiled egg pickled in vinegar.
This is the sort of thing you used to see in pubs on the sides.
So it's
as a bar
again
snack.
Very vinegary,
kind of bar,
and
snack.
therefore it's sort of ideal. Because it kind of adds to the whole malt vinegar experience with fish and chips.
Well, I think that the malt vinegar thing is just because otherwise the batter in particular, the taste of fried is too strong. So or overpowering.
Not only that, it's also the scent.
Yep, the smell is evocative.
Malt vinegar on the hot fish and chips is spectacular, particularly on a sort of cold, rainy, miserable day. Not that we have them. Scandinavia has them.
April brings the sweet spring showers, on and on for hours and hours. It's definitely. I can just talking about it. I can envisage the smell and the look and the taste, and it is glorious. Fish and chips.
Yes, so definitely S tier.
Definitely S tier.
So,
especially with.
Her Majesty the Queen eating fish and chips simply breaks the whole scale, doesn't it?
Her Majesty the Queen eating fish and chips in a Spitfire as she oversees the university boat race.
Yes, precisely. Yes.
Yes, definitely. We also have more fish and chips. A full English breakfast as well. I feel like full English breakfast is definitely. See, is full English breakfast up there with the fish and chips in the S tier, or is it just below in the A tier? Because
put full English breakfast in B tier, to be honest.
In B tier for what?
I would put it in B tier.
What possible reason?
I could be convinced maybe to go A, but I would put my personal instinct. I would put it in B tier.
In B, what is this? Anti-British breakfast heresy that I'm seeing right here. I think the reason
this from the man who relegated the Grand National to D or whatever it was he put it in.
C tier. It's in C tier with the other sports. I think I definitely think that a fish and chips is higher than a full English, but at the same time. I look at. I think mainly because the quality is so drastically varied. I struggle to think of a proper fish and chips from a place which all British people know a proper fish and chips comes from. I struggle to think of one which I've had and it's been awful. Whereas I feel like the quality of a full English breakfast varies. They are also composed of different things depending on what you get, and depending on the quality of the ingredients and whatnot. But I definitely think it's up there. B tier Britisher. It's a solid A tier. It's a solid A tier. I happen to say. People are saying.
I think you're onto something with the variability, and I think that's why, to my mind, it's more B than A tier.
Chat is saying Britisher and beans do not mix well. Is that what it is?
Is this a question as to whether I like baked beans or not?
Pretty much.
Of course I do. And baked beans on toast is definitely a higher tier than the full English breakfast.
People are saying Mark puts cheese on his beans. Don't listen to him.
Oh yes, let's not go into that perversion.
Oh dear. Okay. Anyway, but I think that it's got to be A tier. Aside from anything else, you have Welsh sausages, you have Scottish black pudding, and then you have the English, English rest of it, and with proper toast, not fried bread, or lightly fried bread if you're going to have fried bread, and just everything else, proper pucker.
Is this that it's just basically not right in your mind with fried bread, or is it that you have a particular dislike against fried bread?
I was in the Air Force for long enough that you knew to avoid the fried bread because it was more fat than bread, and a single bite of it was enough to lay you out for
Yes,
2 or
that
3
sounds
days.
like particularly bad fried bread. So I my sympathies. But as such, when it's well made, I quite like fried bread. But I don't want it all the time, and yes, sometimes it can be somewhat a bit of a saturation overload if the whole fry up is already quite greasy.
Indeed, indeed. But I think definitely pop it up. It's got to be in the A tier, even if it's just in the A tier for you, British. It's got to be A tier. Full English breakfast, especially like a full English breakfast on the morning of a hangover, which is obviously something you've never experienced. So I think you can't appreciate it.
Maybe that's why it ranks lower with me.
Possibly, possibly. You've never had the glory of having it when you're nursing one in the morning. Okay. Conquering. This is from Styx Hexenhammer, decided to deign me with his presence. Conquering much of the known world, getting bored of having won, and then letting other people conquer you instead. I can't argue with him in terms of this happening, but I don't think that that's a British thing, especially if we consider what's going on in America, for instance, at the moment.
Yes, I was just about to suggest, isn't that what's happening to America? Put it like this: when it comes to empires, they go up as well as down, and the British kind of realised that their luck was changing and sort of bowed out gracefully.
The European empires go up and down more often than two rabbits in the mating season, but at least we had some staying power.
We had quite a lot of staying power, as my history of the Western world kind of illustrates rather dramatically when it comes to British sea power, where people kind of mock me for saying, "Oh, it was that important you mentioned it 3 times, did you?" And I think it was Rubber who kind of said, "Well, but did you see the different types of ships? We went through generations of different types of British ships dominating the sea. Whereas the Americans are still really in phase 1, the aircraft carrier."
Yeah. Well, to be fair, that's the kind of end goal, isn't it? I don't know where you could really go from the aircraft carrier.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing, of course, about the aircraft carrier is that we showed them how to use it. But as such, that's just it. Nobody can imagine where you go from there. That is, until it happens. And in the days of ships of the line, nobody could imagine a future. Everybody would have thought that the sort of first-rate ships of the line and whatever would dominate everything, until it changed, and then the steamships came along. And then we still continue to dominate, but now with steamships. And then the dreadnoughts came along, and we continue to dominate, but now with dreadnoughts. So it was over such a prolonged period of time, and through such a time of incredible technological change, and that's what you really have to compare to. And as much as I think everybody wants the Americans to remain the behemoth, I think we are seeing now with the Chinese challenge coming along that it's not there by right. They will have to continue working at it.
Yes, they'll have to fight for it. Yes.
And they will discover the same thing that the Brits discovered, and that is you can technologically rush ahead, but it's easier to catch up than it is to forge forward continuously.
Yes,
so your rivals can catch up with you technologically. And then you will also discover the numbers game. That, 300-odd million Americans
Yeah.
are up against, what is it, about 1.6 billion Chinese. That's what we discovered. That basically, for all the factories in the world and the steam engines and this, that, whatever, once the French and the Germans and once they all start catching up, and the Americans, then suddenly numbers start counting.
Well, yes,
unless you have by that time achieved yet another technological advantage that kind of alleviates it.
Do you mean a technological advantage like planting opium fields in China and letting them at it?
Well, why not?
Just saying, why don't you just try?
Dropping leaflets of Winnie the Pooh over China.
Yes.
That more than likely would be enough.
Why don't you just try this poppy seed decoction I have here, and it definitely won't screw you up and take you out of the arms race for just long enough for us to pull far enough ahead that you become completely dependent.
That they were really at any sort of equal level at that time. I mean,
no, but we didn't want them to be.
They were still stuck pretty much in the medieval period to Renaissance somewhere.
Well, they were a land army based civilization. So yes, the ability to spread was limited, and their ability to innovate was also limited, and still
they
is.
Tell us they could build massive ships several times the size of football grounds. So, if we take their word for it, that shouldn't have held them back.
Taking the Chinese's word for it. I mean, they were innovators in their own way, but I mean, come on. Right, let's get off this, because we need to talk about British things, not Chinese things. Damn it, Britisher, always taking us off topic. Bangers and mash. Bangers and mash is the next item. Again, great British grub that we've got going on here.
Bangers and mash. Yes, there's a theme going on here, isn't it? You were complaining about my sporting events, and now we're going through food.
But bangers and mash, like a mound of mashed potato with sausages in it and gravy, like a thick gravy. Come on.
I'm not sure that is. It's very British. I understand what you mean, but it's not as if the Germanic-speaking part of the world is unfamiliar with sausages, and they also know how to do mashed potato.
Yes, but bangers and mash, Britisher. Bangers and mash. Specifically.
No, I'm not quite as won over by bangers and mash.
You can't. Oh, for goodness sake. Well, we shall pop them in C tier just because they were just a staple part of the diet. Jellied eels, on the other hand.
So hang on, the sporting events all get put into one category.
Yes.
But the food...
the difference is, Britisher, I'm not a sports fan.
Yes, you're just a misery guts who has absolutely no understanding of some parts of British culture.
I'm not misery guts.
I have an aside for jellied eels here, which is relevant. And that is, you are familiar, of course, with the fact that due to Brexit and Northern Ireland now still being in a sort of Euro-controlled economic zone, so to speak, regarding quite a lot of agricultural produce and so on. They still have to abide by quite a lot of the European regulations.
Right.
And this is relevant to jellied eels, because where do you think most of the jellied eels come from? Northern Ireland.
Oh. Okay.
And Northern Ireland are now told that they can't, wait for this, export eels to Britain.
Who else eats eels? Only Britain.
Because eels are seen as an endangered species in the EU.
Are they?
To the point where they can be sold within the EU, but they can't be exported.
What a bizarre...
Northern Ireland is now forbidden from exporting to its own nation. So the London jellied eels makers will now have to look for a new source of eels.
We'll have to breed them ourselves.
And, well, I mean, this is just a bizarre thing. We have eels in the United Kingdom, and we've been getting them for decades, if not centuries, merrily from Northern Ireland. But for some reason now they can't export them to the United Kingdom, even though they're in the United Kingdom.
We need to throw some more sprouts at Belgium and see how they land.
I think it's about time the Irish gave up their
EU membership,
their long-standing grudge, and just decided, look, this whole EU malarkey thing and the Irish border, it's just best solved with the Irish also leaving the EU and just joining
Britain again. Yeah. I am curious. I've never actually eaten eel or jellied or otherwise.
Neither have I. The look does not appeal.
No, this is the thing. It is one of the most visually repulsive foods I've ever seen in my entire life. The kind of like grey, stringy flesh in gelatin, which I'm not a fan of generally anyway, is not something that appeals. Although there is a very reputable eel pie shop and pie and mash shop near where I live, which I have yet to try. But because obviously lockdown, etc. So hopefully I'll be able to. I might do it as just to try, Rich, even if I choke on it and nearly die. So there's that. Brave man, indeed. But I'll do it because you're not British and therefore you're incapable.
Yes.
Obviously.
You just wait.
We have Vix here who's saying, apart from the Britisher, there you go, you're held in high regard.
Hang on. Jellied eels, where do we categorise
Oh,
that?
yes, jellied eels. I think it is something which is British, but as I've never tried them.
I think jellying is British. I mean, other countries eat eels.
I mean, we do love our preserves, right? So, including preserving eels, apparently.
Yeah, I would say what? I mean, if we want to be polite, I would say C tier, but otherwise I would put it D tier.
Let's put it in D tier then. I mean, we just don't know at this point. Yeah, Vic says, apart from the British, the Union flag, or Jack on a ship's son.
Well, so there you go, apart from the Britisher. See, there is someone who agrees with me.
Rubbish. But the Union flag itself, yes, quintessentially British. Make sure you hang it.
I know there is this pedantic thing about the Union flag, but let's face it, in common parlance, everyone calls it the Union Jack.
Okay. I mean, the fact that we call it a jack instead of a flag in common parlance itself is by itself a very British thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think the Union flag is an easy S tier. I don't know about you.
Yes, undoubtedly.
So there we go. We also have steak and kidney pudding. Oh, yes.
Now, you've lost me here. Steak and kidney pie, yes. Steak and kidney pudding, I'm unfamiliar with.
You are not aware of steak and kidney pudding? It's a suet pudding, and it looks like this. Hoping that it will turn up on the stream for you to see shortly. But this is basically beef suet. And you mix it all together. It looks kind of disgusting when you're making it, very raw, meaty, and then you put it in, and it's just a big mass of meat and onion and gravy, and in this kind of suet shell, which is absolutely delicious. And it is absolutely one of those kind of childhood, quintessentially British meals, I have to say.
I can honestly say I'm not familiar. I'm familiar with a pie, and it does not look that dissimilar from steak and kidney pie.
It's not puff pastry. There's no kind of pastry like you know how pies have a kind of puffed pastry lid and that sort of thing.
Yes, if they're made with puff pastry. Yes.
Yes, this doesn't have that. It is all, kind of thick suet pastry all the way around, and it's very rich, and it's a lot fuller than a pie, typically.
Talking of pies, and but by all means, let's grade this first. But then I have a suggestion, and I will have to make it before I forget it.
Okay.
So steak and kidney pudding. You seem to be A tier here. I'm unfamiliar with it, so I will just have to let you do the ranking for this.
Steak and kidney pudding is an easy A tier, yes.
Well, there you go then. So here's a suggestion of mine, which has just sprung to mind when we've been talking about all this meat and all this pie, because there are mince pies.
Mince
Mince
pies.
pies surely must rank somewhere on the Britishometer.
Oh yes, I forced my Polish friends to eat mince pies at Christmas because they were terrified of the idea of them, especially something that was filled with mince meat that you eat and it's sweet. And what on earth is this? And you're just going, no, no, no. You must simply experience it to believe and understand. And yeah, definitely, mince pie is one of those great British. It's almost an institution in and of itself. Really, it is one of the quintessential. It's right up there with Christmas cake as a Christmas tradition.
I would say mince pie surpasses Christmas cake.
Personally, me too, because I'm not a fan of marzipan. But I think, in terms of the
Christmas cake is really just fruit cake with marzipan.
With the recognition,
I think
the recognisability of the mince pie is definitely well up there. It puts me up there with a Christmas pudding and the Christmas cake is one of the key signs of Christmas. So I think a mince pie is actually an S tier, personally.
Yes.
I will put that there 100%. I stand behind that decision. Roast me in the chat. There we go. So, what else?
The mince pie wars are about to begin in the chat.
So what else do we have? There's some very fair-headed things here. In my experience, working and fair employment laws are a British thing. The British thing. I don't know about fair employment laws, especially of late. But
I'm not sure whether you can sort of put this down as being something particularly British, to be honest.
No. But I'll tell you something we can put down as very British. I won't even rank that one. I won't even tier it. Going to war with France, which is an interesting choice of words.
Precisely,
because
yes,
going to war with France and going to war with France is what we've got.
I was thinking exactly the same thing. It's beautifully. It's beautiful sort of work of ambiguity there. Northern English football enthusiast.
A big fan.
How did Orange Agent 21 ever get to Northern English football enthusiast?
I don't know. But it sounds amazing. I'm sure there's a story there.
There's a journey there, isn't there?
Yes, especially I love the images like Northern Gammon but in a suit with champagne. I like that. So going to war with France, definitely up there. Although I haven't had one in a while. So I feel like, given the relevance of mince pies and fish and chips and Her Majesty the Queen, the Spitfire is from World War II, for instance. But I think going to war with France, to me, it slips into A tier. It slips into A tier. It's definitely up there as one of the key hallmarks of Britishness.
Particularly given the panache of the deliberate ambiguity.
Yes.
I think we definitely can have it in A tier.
Definitely. Going to war with the cheese-eating surrender monkeys would have put it into S tier, but what can we do? It's an A tier item now. We have Sue, Count Dankula's wife, saying, arguing with people from other parts of the UK about what things are named. It's a roll. No, it's a butty. No, it's a bap. No, it's some other BS. I see it constantly, and it's annoying.
Well, that, of course, is terribly British, because it shows the sort of regional diversity of English.
Yes, our great many accents, dialects, and whatnot.
You will get it in other parts of the world, but not to this extent. Yes, just not being able to agree on the name for a sandwich.
And yet somehow it all works. Speaking of which, the Earl of Sandwich is S tier. Probably A tier though, actually. But yes, the arguing with people over terminology, given that we are such a small country with small distances between things, a small nation, I should say, not a small country. I would say this is definitely an A tier Britishism, Britishism, yes. Apparently, people in Yorkshire call a bread roll like this a bread cake. Have you come across this term before,
I've not come across. I've not come across a bread cake.
I thought so too.
I've come across sort of various sort of strange Yorkshireisms.
I thought this was. I thought this was a meme. I thought it was a joke. But people have genuinely been up in my mentions, declaring that this is a bread cake, and I don't. As far as I can tell, out of all these options here, rolls, butties, baps, etc., and all that, bread cake is the worst.
I think they're just trying to get you Mardy.
Me, Mardy Britisher? I've never been Mardy in my entire life. I don't know what you're
Well, there you go. So you know what Mardy means. Yes. So there we are.
Oh, it's clearly bow. The scone wars. Obviously, it's pronounced scone or scone. It's a scone until it's scone. All this sort of thing. Although the Americans also decide, when it comes to sandwiches, apparently have things called a hoagie, the sub, the grinder, the torpedo, etc. So they're almost as virulent as us when it comes to arguing over what sandwiches should be called.
Well, but torpedo sounds awfully corporate.
It does. Cobs, bacon cob, chip cob. No, they're bacon butties and chip butties and bacon sarnies and that sort of thing.
I have never had a chip butty in my life.
You are missing out. You really are. Like, just it's a soft bread roll.
It just seems somewhat incongruous.
I know. But just hear me out. A soft bread roll with an over helping of butter. Then anywhere between sort of 8 and 12 chips go into this, like proper chunky chips. And then obviously the top on top with, if you want salt, if you want vinegar, if you want ketchup, whatever it is that you want on top of that, you can have it. And then the rest of the bun goes on. And biting into that, and it is soft and then crispy and then potatoey and hot. And it is amazing.
Well, I'm just not sure. I don't think you've won me over on this one. Particularly with the oodles and lashings of butter, I think you kind of lost me there.
Well, it's a butty for a reason, but I will.
You don't say.
I am going to have to find. Like, you will either have to tell me that the next time you get fish and chips, you will have to have some of those chips inside a bun as a sandwich, as a chip butty, or you and I are going to have to meet one of these days, and I'm going to have you served one.
Has left the stream. The Britisher who left the stream.
It's just Mark. It's just NSO attempting to expand the British's horizons on British cuisine, but lo and behold, he'd rather have anything but that. It's your choice, Britisher: jellied eel or chip butty.
God.
So yes, I think certainly chip butty it is. Okay. Eel pie, pubs. Do you think the British pub is
pubs? Yes, pubs definitely. Pubs are definitely A tier.
An A tier,
possibly an S tier.
Possibly, well, yeah. Some pubs are, but dive pubs do exist, and also chain corporate pubs now exist. And I think like the classic,
the even the chain corporate pubs have something well ahead of a lot of what goes on the continent.
Microbreweries, they do. I think that the traditional British country pub that serves a mixture of what is all known, and every British man and woman understands what pub grub represents in terms of types of food.
Indeed.
And that serves at least 2 or 3 local pints. And has, obviously the general selection of lager available. You should be able to walk into a British pub, go up to the bar, and instead of picking a drink, just say lager or bitter, and get that, and that will be fab. And yeah, just whenever you need one in the middle of the countryside, one will appear, and that is the way it goes. So
yeah, that's almost a sort of fast show character I've just thought of. He walks into any pub, it doesn't matter which one, it's never the same one, and just sort of walks up to the counter and goes, The usual Susan. She knows what it is.
Amazing. And it should also potentially have the option of a ploughman's on the menu in various forms. So that's my opinion on such.
And of course, they also have to have, because of course this is a sports mad nation that needs distraction, and unless they're not so obvious, and then they don't need these things. They need one or two tellies with the sport on.
I watch.
And they also need a darts board and not a snooker, but a billiard table.
Or yes, a pool table. Or they can also have skittles, which is not the same.
Yes,
they're not the same as
I will
bowling.
grant that. Yes, it's an honourable exception. Yes,
and that's that. We used to have the greatest like Skittles lane. I loved that. I loved doing that. We also no, it's completely gone out of my mind what it was. I mean,
the art of Skittles really is just thunk that ball down towards the Skittles as hard as you possibly can. There isn't really too much technique about it, is there?
Not really. I mean, it's not a very long lane.
I mean, with bowling and whatever, they try to put spin on it and whatever. But with Skittles, it's much more primitive. I mean, it really is aim for the centre and then just thunk it as hard as you can. Would that be fair? That's the ideal. That's the optimal Skittles technique.
And you get a kind of bonus if the Skittles kind of fly out of the lane and potentially hit someone on a table. Yes, definitely. Right. So we have here sitting on a beach for days. Yes, and I will tack into this. In fact, so pubs are an easy S tier. That we also have sitting on a beach for days. Now, this is also well known. The British don't care about the weather when they're at the beach, just that they're on a beach.
And is this a British beach or a continental beach?
Presumably a British beach. We have Blackpool.
But if it's a British beach and it's sort of, trying to spend some time with a wind shield,
the windbreak, yes,
on Brighton Beach, then I'm with you.
Yes,
if it's a matter of just spending time turning into a lobster on a continental beach, then I'm afraid the Dutch and the Germans and the Scandinavians are just as good at that.
The British will attempt to get as red as a lobster on a British beach, despite the fact that a lot of them are shingle, and a lot of them are don't actually get they're overcast when you go there. It doesn't matter how sunny the day was when you set off; it's overcast when you reach the beach. And also,
yes, as I say, you need to bring the windbreak.
With the windbreak, and additionally, the British are absolute sticklers for. I am at the beach. I am going to have a Flake 99, a Mr. Whippy.
I was actually just about to mention
an ice cream.
Trying to eat the ice cream whilst not swallowing too much sand. Yes.
I don't know about swallowing sand, but just eating
or
ice cream.
Any other sort of grit that the windbreak can't protect you from.
But the British are actually one of the last time I checked, which was some years ago, we were the largest per capita consumers of ice cream in the world, and this was put down primarily to the fact that if we go to the beach, we must have an ice cream, and that's just the way the British work. So
and
British,
of course, we have ice cream vans.
British
ice cream vans are also something particularly British.
So, British beach behaviour. I think this is a solid B tier. Definitely a solid B tier.
Yes. But since I mentioned that, ice cream vans, where would they rank?
Ice cream vans themselves, music included. Well, they can go in A.
Yes.
They can go in A, can't they?
Because, I mean, in Europe, you don't know ice cream vans. You have kiosks and whatever, but it's sort of... the idea of a van playing music, driving around neighbourhoods? No, it's completely alien over there.
Let's see what we've got here. Reverence of eccentrics. Yes.
Yes.
Eccentricism is definitely very British. I think that's a very solid C tier there. I think we're...
Oh, no.
You put that up there?
No, it's definitely an A tier, possibly an S tier.
Really?
Yes.
I mean, Monty Python is the kind of quintessential surreal British eccentricity, but also we have the kind of the landed gentry were men of eccentricities. How many of the
But
explorers.
eccentrics are people who are not non-conformists.
Yes.
And the British not only have, over time, generated quite a selection of these people, but at the same time we admire them for it.
Yes.
Whereas other societies actually would regard these people as sort of,
Mad.
good for nothings. They're sort of troublesome by not being conformists. So no, I would say eccentrics, but more so the reverence of eccentrics, I think, is very much A tier, if not S tier.
I shall give it to you. We shall pop it in the A tier then, certainly. We don't want to populate the A and the S tier too much. We must rank some stuff below. But I think you've won me around on that one, Britisher. Won me around. Zulu, the film. I don't know if we could put in individual films necessarily on there, although we've done the same with sports and foods. So Zulu. If I had watched it, I'm sure I would be able to tell you, but I don't know. I shall let the Britisher rank this one. Where does Zulu come in terms of the most British thing?
You see, now I'm sort of torn between wanting to sort of just let my bias run away with me, and at the same time by trying to sort of deliberately rank it lower in order to counteract my bias. It's definitely one of the British films, and it's very it's a sort of, it has a symbolic value all of its own, a bit like, I don't know, the Battle of Britain or Bridge over the River Kwai and things like that. I would put it in A tier. I know you're asking us not to populate the upper tiers too much, but I would say it's definitely there. I'm not sure we should go all the way and put it S tier, but it's definitely A tier.
All right. I shall attempt to watch it this weekend.
And definitely, this is definitely one you have to see.
Very well. I shall attempt to watch it this week. Attempt. Fox hunting.
Which really, that's not so obvious speak for no.
We'll see. We'll see. I hear it's quite long, but we'll see. Fox hunting. Fox hunting.
Yes.
And I'm like, yes, but at the same time, because of the ban and everything, it comes up every so often. It's primarily done, by people in the country and that sort of thing, and also by a kind of,
it's the country and it's the landed gentry in the country, really.
Yeah.
But as such, it's perhaps a little more widespread than just being the toffs, as some people would point out.
Yeah.
It is something terribly British. Again, no other country I can think of has created some sort of almost ritual of hunting in the same way that the British have with fox hunting. But again, it's far from the FA Cup final. I would say C would more than likely be fair, wouldn't it?
Well, C is on a level with the FA Cup final.
Well, yeah, but that's because you're wrong.
So, okay, we'll pop it in C tier there then. We have obviously setting fire to the homes of American presidents.
There is something about that. That's something that's somewhere.
It's something the British did, but I don't know if it's a symbol of Britishness. It's like we've had our back and forths with the Americans over time, but it's like
let's give it a C tier. It's definitely part of the rich tapestry of British romantic history.
Curry.
No.
Although I will caveat this with we are great lovers of foreign food as much as we are our own. And so, this is why we and the curry is an interesting one as well, because we We liked the idea of curry, and so we made our own, which we could tolerate.
Yes, but the thing I would say is, it's nowadays. I think it's the top takeaway, isn't it? Curry.
Yeah, it's one of the top foods.
But the top sort of family meal, I believe, is spaghetti bolognese.
Oh yes.
So if we start measuring things according to just by how much they're consumed,
how popular they are. Yes.
We will very quickly lose the beef Wellingtons
Yes.
for curry and spag bowl.
I don't think anyone looks at Britain and immediately thinks curry. So
yes.
that's a struck from the list option there. Marmite.
How should we say? It gets an honourable mention.
After
all, a certain red dwarf member would otherwise never forgive us.
Marmite.
Indubitably is British.
It is. As is the phrase, you love it or you hate it.
Well, for one, it's a byproduct from brewing. Then it's, quite a lot of people consume it. And even more people talk about it, as we are now, because of the love it or hate it thing.
Yes.
I need to really be in the mood for Marmite. If so, I can eat a piece or two and then I don't want any more. But if I'm not in the mood, oh dear God, stay away.
I can't stand it.
I would put it a solid D.
A D tier.
It's
Marmite,
definitely something British.
Marmite is D tier. There you go. You heard it here, and now we await the dissent from the chat on that one there. Living in the rest of the world's head rent-free. I mean, nobody... This is the thing. One of my favourite quotes from Flanders and Swan is him going out... He's talking about nationalism, and he's like, every other nation has nationalistic songs except us. The Scots, even within our own one, in our own thing, he's talking about the English specifically. It's like the Scots have Scotland for I, or for me, as it should more properly be, and that sort of thing. And then he talks about the Welsh and so on. And then he goes, but England never really needed a national song. We were the best, and everybody knew that. We didn't feel the need to toot our own horn about it. And so I do think that living in the world's head rent-free is definitely, it deserves to be on the list. I think D tier.
Put it like this: the Americans are the world hegemon right now when it comes to the sort of overall military power, and the Americans are called by the Iranians the Great Satan.
Yes.
And the reason the Iranians make the distinction of calling them the Great Satan is because they still call us today the Little Satan.
Oh, I did not know that.
So even if we are no longer the world hegemonic power, we still live rent-free in the heads of the Iranians. So this is actually very, very true. And it's also one of the reasons why we don't do well at Eurovision.
Yes, that most unbiased and unpolitical of musical events, Eurovision.
So should we put this in A or is it a B?
Fine, Bridget. A B tier. We are populating A far too much. But I think B tier is sound. Winston Churchill.
S.
I think there can be no...
And the photograph, Dan Orchard, the photograph is perfect.
Marvellous. Top Gear, the TV show, presumably the one with...
Can I suggest another person while we're at it? Because here is Winston Churchill in this picture being not very politically correct.
Yes.
And I just saw, I think it was yesterday, maybe you caught it, not so obvious. There was a tweet. There were one or two tweets going about of the Duke of Edinburgh.
Oh yes, he just said, just take the fucking picture.
Precisely. And for that picture, for that alone, I think he belongs in S tier.
Yes, he can go in S tier. So.
Because that was perfection.
There is
You
also
could sort of see, for anybody wanting to know when it was listening, it was clearly some kind of family photo being taken of the royal family, and you had a photographer still faffing about, walking halfway back to his camera and then turning back to rearrange something or whatever. And by that time, one could clearly tell that Prince Philip had pretty much lost patience.
He'd had
and
enough.
just looked at him and said, "Why don't you just take the fucking picture?" And for that, we love him.
Yes, he definitely deserves it. As well, he visited a small African tribe in his youth, and they gave him a picture of him. He gave them a picture of him, and they worship that picture today. So I think just for that as well, he goes in S tier. Additionally, we have obviously here Top Gear. People are saying Top Gear is bloody awful. Some people are saying they love Top Gear.
I know you will no doubt object because it's overpopulated, but it has to be A tier, sure.
It certainly does. We are, of course, talking about the Hammond, May and Clarkson version,
Yes.
the one that ran for
They who are now the Grand Tour.
yes 20 seasons of that, and absolutely glorious as it was. In almost all respects, and certainly Top Gear is A tier. Queuing we have here.
Yes,
Yes?
most certainly. As someone who grew up on the continent, I can assure you other nations are not quite as polite.
I think a solid D tier, sort of like it's.
No.
Are you going to
At
A
least a
tier
B
this
tier.
now? At least a
Queuing
B
is at
tier.
least a B tier.
Oh,
It is
yeah.
terribly, terribly British.
Terribly British. B tier it is. I'm trying to avoid overpopulating. I'm trying to establish a benchmark here, even if it's within narrow bounds. But we'll see. And this includes.
See, there, the next one, I Am But a Cabbage, says the universal hatred of queue jumpers.
Yes, all
See,
tiny.
somebody's immediately backing me up on this.
100%. Umbrellas.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, obviously the quintessential umbrella is that of Mary Poppins.
Indeed.
I would say certainly, especially the kind of domed umbrella, and obviously many scenes of Britain in the 50s and beyond, with everyone with their dark umbrellas. We like that. Again,
And of course, Rihanna was from Barbados, and former British colony. So obviously, she sung about an umbrella.
oh, shut up! I can't believe you made that reference.
While I was saying it, I knew you would love it.
Oh my goodness! Well, chat, I'm sure will love it. Umbrellas. Again, establishing a solid benchmark. I am going to put them in D tier. I think the FA Cup is more British than umbrellas.
Sorry, you think what?
I think the FA Cup is more British than umbrellas.
Yes, but the FA Cup is malplaced, as we all know.
It's
but I mean,
not
you're trying to
malplaced.
make out that chip butties are more British than umbrellas. I mean,
Yes.
for God's sake.
Chip butties are 100% more British than umbrellas. Why? Who knew that this would be the bone of contention between us this evening? But there you go.
Somebody just watch Steed in the Avengers, and then tell me that a bowler hat and an umbrella is not terribly, terribly British.
A bowler hat and an umbrella combo, yes, but umbrellas themselves. I still think a chip butty is more British. It's more British. Although bowler hat's pretty British. Pretty, like, bowler hat's B tier. Easy. Shepherd's pie. As distinct from
Cottage pie.
cottage pie, yes. I would say
C tier.
C tier. Fairly standard fare there. Tea itself, obviously S tier.
Of course.
Lion bars. Definitely like those.
D tier.
But they could be D tier, did you say?
Yes.
D tier. British
They're
has no
British, but, I mean, yeah.
British has no taste. And calling fat dripping. Yes, because this is a dripping instead of butter and that sort of thing, didn't it? People used to Spread dripping.
Well, no, drippings is lard, isn't it? It's not butter.
No. I said it wasn't. I didn't say it was. I said it was a replacement for butter on on your sandwiches and that sort of thing. Bread and dripping was milk, but I can't say I've ever had it. So I
well, yes, but in this case, it's more of a lingual thing, isn't it? But I'm not sure that really ranks.
Are you there, Britisher?
Yes, I just said I'm not sure that really ranks on. I think this might be a non-player that the drippings one. I don't think that's. I don't think that's quite a D even.
It's definitely much more in the north, along with gravy on chips. But so I think I'd give it a solid D tier. That's there.
Well, since we're talking north, wasn't this once something that I sort of in the last week or two it got mentioned, and I think you said that you actually knew it. Somebody mentioned Hendos.
Hendos?
Yes, sort of Henderson's. I think it's from Leeds, and it's sort of their version of Worcester sauce.
Hendos? Oh, Henderson's relish.
Yes,
I know Henderson's relish. But I appreciate that it's probably called Hendo somewhere else. But it's something that I purchased, but my family doesn't really do. So it was just I've never known it as Hendos.
It's as I say, it's a northern version of Worcester sauce. It's Lee and Perrins, isn't it? That's the sort of famous, world famous brand, if you know what I mean. But Henderson's relish is a sort of lesser known twin that comes from Yorkshire.
People are saying dripping isn't just fat, it's meat juices. It's called that because it's how it's made. Slow rendered suet makes dripping delicious. I'm not surprised you haven't heard of this, Britisher, given that you don't even know what a steak and kidney pudding is, so you can't be trusted on anything.
Says the person who ranks the FA Cup in C tier.
Yeah, or E tier, either or. Just making many enemies in chat, and on the show as well, presumably. The toast rack. Apparently, the Americans find the toast rack very, very much a ludicrous idea, if only because they've never heard of one and they didn't believe it was real.
Well, they don't believe in toast that much anyway, don't they?
But did they not realise that if they put toast on a plate by itself, then condensation forms under the toast, and then it makes the toast soggy?
Or as Frasier's dad likes to call it, toast sweat.
Toast sweat, yes.
Yes, so bonus points for anybody who remembers that from Frasier.
There we go. And again, tailed, that pinnacle of taste and.
So toast rack, where do we rank that?
Yes. This is relevant. Tailed feature, that pinnacle of toast rack knowledge and culinary expertise. Said his grandmother had one that lived in a cupboard, unused since the 70s. I've only ever seen them in B&Bs. I don't know how commonly they're used, but the toast rack is definitely a British thing. I mean, it could sit in D tier. I'm quite happy with that. Apologising to the person that just trod on your foot.
I think we're taking this idea of the British apologise for everything a little bit too far.
Yes. I don't think we would apologise for that. In fact, it's a rather choice language. Again, that's a class thing as well. Rubber says stiff upper lip. The stiff upper lip.
I think there is one situation in which one could see the situation of someone stepping on your foot and you apologising, but you have to read the tone, because the person, after you've trodden on their foot, will look at you and the eyebrow will go up and they will just stare right in your eyes and go, "Excuse me."
And you'll go.
But if you think they're apologising, you're misunderstanding that.
Let me see.
Because I think what they want to hear is some sort of reaction of yours, or else. or else you might lose some teeth.
I don't know if... I mean, we've already done apologising and that sort of thing, so I don't know if we can add that to its own additional category. But appreciate the thought from Stealthy Guru.
Well, I think Rubber here has just got an S tier, hasn't he?
The stiff upper lip is certainly an S tier. The very sign of the officer class, yes.
I mean, I think... Well, I don't think it's necessarily an officer class thing. I think stiff upper lip is just something terribly British. It is sadly something that is lacking in recent times when it comes to, the progressive stack and victimhood culture and all this nonsense. We would like to see a little more stiff upper lip, but it is terribly, terribly British.
Terribly British, S tier. Saying yeah after a statement, as in question and saying. You know what I'm saying? Yeah?
No.
Sarnie is slang for a sandwich, yeah?
I think the expression "isn't it?" It is, isn't it? That sort of thing is perhaps.
It also.
I mean, so much so Asterix made fun of that. I don't know how familiar you are with the Asterix comics.
None at all.
They're seen as sort of classics in their own right. Goscinny was the sort of French humorist who wrote them, and somebody, Uderzo put them in comic form. But he did a lot, first in France itself, about making fun about the different French regions. So this ancient Gaul, whilst combating the Romans, is always all over the place. But once they had been all around France, they started running out of places to go in France. So obviously they went to other countries. And what was so good about it is how well observed some of the humour was regarding the national idiosyncrasies of, those particular countries. And, of course, the British are constantly doing this. Oh, it is, isn't it? Oh, you do, don't you?
Yes.
And yes, I mean, so much so that, yes, Goscinny picked up on it. So, yes, it more than likely is something terribly British.
Fake accents unite.
S tier.
S tier. I love this little story that's come here. I once saw a courier deliver a parcel to someone's home, and they both said sorry as the parcel passed to the other. I guess the delivery driver said sorry for disturbing the day, and the customer said sorry for the inconvenience of receiving the parcel. I like that. Taking a windbreak to the beach, Britisher, yes, instead of a parasol. I like this. A chav on a bike doing a wheelie in the middle of the road and whispering to yourself, "Fall, you twat." Yeah, that's definitely a solid B tier Britishism. Blackadder, S tier.
No. Blackadder is, I would say, B tier. Let's be fair, it's a B tier.
I tell you what, I said S tier, and as I said S tier, the first series flashed to mind. And wait, let me finish. It's not just that though. It's also the fact that the Blackadder is as well known as it is, aside from anything else, I think because of Blackadder Goes Forth.
Mm-hmm.
And excuse me. So Blackadder.
He's doing impressions now, ladies and gentlemen.
I did not mean to sneeze. Blackadder Goes Forth. So I think in hindsight, but at the time it's not so much. I think it's a solid. I will agree with you, Bridger. I think you can go into the B tier there.
I think there may be some that belong into A or even S tier, but I don't think it's Blackadder. And I like Blackadder. I really think Blackadder is a classic, but I think there are some, Fawlty Towers springs to mind, Porridge springs to mind, that may have a higher ranking than Blackadder.
I don't know if I'd rank Fawlty Towers higher than Blackadder, but that's just me. Although Fawlty Towers is very good as well. Vice Admiral Lord Nelson, standing on the deck of HMS St. George, raising his spyglass to his blind eye and announcing, "I declare, I do not see that signal," thereby creating the idiom to turn a blind eye, perhaps the most celebrated act of disobedience in history. I think that's...
It's definitely up there, but isn't it to a certain extent sort of a combination of wit and stiff upper lip?
Possibly, quite possibly. I mean, people are saying self-deprecating humor in terms of things to go up there, but I don't think it's self-deprecating. But I mean, the man generated an idiom, but that's one thing. But I don't know whether or not it's that prevalent. It's clearly up there. It's clearly up there. I think we'll B tier it, for sure. I think we'll B tier it.
I think I'll agree on B tier. It's definitely a famous incident. The Danes will never forget it. but yes, I think as itself, I'm not sure how much of a symbol it is, that one incident. Because I mean, it's not as if there weren't others. Like standing on the deck of the Victory, bedecked like the crown jewels, knowing everybody is going to shoot at you.
The Bearskin Guards we've got here marching along. This is one of my favourite clips of them, actually. They just basically say, "Make way for the Queen's Guard," and then the guy's going past, he just goes, "Move!" and then he doesn't move in time and gets absolutely clobbered because the guards stop for no man. And I like it. I like it a lot.
Well, yes, I think we've all chuckled.
Once
or twice. Yes,
I can't. I can't place this specific event on the list because
if I'm not mistaken, the reason they have the bearskins is because they were granted the bearskins after defeating Napoleon's Imperial Guard at Waterloo.
I don't know. That was
because they wore bearskins, I believe.
Beefeaters.
So after they defeated the Imperial Guard, when that famous column came up the hill at Waterloo, and they were basically reduced the zilch and retreated.
And they said, "Please take our hats. Just take our hats and go, please. Please just take the hats and go."
But basically, afterwards, as a sort of a sign of honour, they were issued the bearskins.
I like that.
It's a different design of bearskin, but it apparently it stemmed from that.
I like that. English muffins, which I don't think are actually that English, which they're just not that commonly consumed here. Let's see what we've got here. Banana Man. A very Banana Man, as funny as he is, and the Beano goes in sort of D tier now, especially given it's relatively discontinued. Any final ones that we've got here? Driving on the wrong side of the road. You mean everyone else who drives on the wrong side of the road? We drive on the correct side of the road. Thank you very much. Okay, so that's our tier list for Britishisms. Let us know your favourites in the comments after the show.
And I think we did manage the full 2 hours just on Britishisms.
We have done nearly 2 hours on Britishisms, but I did say at the beginning of this that we would discuss the serious stuff at the end, British. So I'm afraid
you have 6 minutes.
I have 6 minutes to do this. Okay. So obviously we have Boris's Brexit COVID lockdown exit strategy, which is kind of bizarre. From the 8th of March, all schools are going to open with outdoor after-school sports and activities allowed. Recreation in outdoor public spaces such as parks are allowed between 2 people. So you can have a coffee, you can have a drink, you can have a picnic. And then for the 29th of March, it's going to be the rule of 6 or 2 households. And tennis, basketball courts will reopen and everything just like that. I just don't... They want everything to go. They've got all these things. I don't trust any of this. I'm kind of ignoring most of it. My general take on this is that they told us 3 weeks to flatten the curve. They told us just another couple of weeks. They told us just another couple of months, and now it's been over a year. I leave it as what it is. I don't trust what they're saying. I just go with that. If the vaccine program has the impact that on their numbers that they are hoping, then they'll finally stop some of this madness. I don't know. Any quick fire take from you here, Bridger?
In their defence, I don't really think they're sort of saying this is definitely going to happen.
No, they have conditions. The vaccine
they are basically saying, look, this is going to happen. This is the intention. But of course, always given the possibility of further mutations or something else going wrong, this can all still derail. So as such, when you say you're going to ignore it, I think that's more than likely the best thing to do, because as such, none of this is set in stone, so you might as well just wait for the individual announcements to be made, as in, we're now doing step 1, if you know what I mean. Because prior to you actually reaching that point, there are so many caveats to their announcing these intentions that you sort of feel, well, it's a bit of a much. It's sort of a much of a muchness at the moment. So I would very much sort of look at it philosophically and just say, well, let's wait and see.
Yeah, pretty much. I've just realised we've got the super chats to go through, so I'm going to take off the final story for now, which is the Merseyside police apologising over their incorrect offensive claim, and I'm just gonna run through the super chats and see what people have had to say throughout the stream. Sutsgoen says 173 seconds, absolutely Britisher. I mean immoral. Thank you very much, Sutsgoen. Britisher obviously fuming behind the scenes now at him being used as a synonym for immorality. Chris Bingley says the most British thing ever is having a pint at the local. I think it's definitely one of those things up there. Pubs, S tier, as we know. Jedi Knight Anaquin Cringewalker says, you've heard of Awuisha. Now prepare for not so Ahigus. Ahigus. I think he's referencing the Ahigao face, which you don't want to look up, Britisher. Or perhaps you do, but do so on your own time. A darling pair if brought together. Well, I hope that no one ever draws not so Ahigaus. So there you go. Drake Glazer for $10, thank you so much, and says, after disabling the anti-coffee device and bribing the demon in the base of it, I can say with confidence that the Britisher mug is perfect for coffee. Any commentary, Britisher?
You're bluffing.
You're bluffing. Nobody could bribe the demon inside the mug. Mr. Will Guitar, £10, no message, thank you ever so much, that's very generous. Aaron Telford says, baked beans on toast is evil and is worst tier. Well, Aaron Telford, thank you for the £2, which will go on to beans on toast that I will have next week. Mighty Balzac says, how can anyone celebrate Captain Oates Day, the 17th of March, with lockdown in place? Yes, I think this is a reference, aside from anything else, because the Jewish lobbyists are getting very upset at the fact that Passover is like a week before one of the loosening off days, or the final loosening off day, and it's like that everyone's got stuff. The whole point of it is that it's off before Easter. I
really think this is the least of our problems.
Yes, it's the least of our problems. The holiday that the vast majority of the nation celebrates, the one that school holidays are based around, Passover and all that jazz. It's just it's your festival. You do what you're going to do, but this is Britain. Thank you very much. That Indian dude for $5 Aussie says there is an opium war currently. Chinese fentanyl is devastating America through the opioid crisis. Yes. I know nothing of this. Bridger, have you got any comment on this?
Well, I mean, fentanyl is sort of a synthetic drug. You call it kind of synthetic heroin.
I know it's fentanyl is.
Many, many times stronger, and people are being able to simply buy it on the internet and have it sent in, I don't know, a bubble pack or something like that. And it seems to be really hitting America in enormous numbers. And it is largely responsible, I think, for a lot of their sort of opiate crisis. How should we say? It's a sort of double whammy that at one moment the actual drug companies have been extremely scrupulous in in selling, basically just pushing opiates like mad.
Yeah.
And then, of course, once they then get withdrawn from patients, they start looking elsewhere. And it seems that fentanyl seems to be one of those drugs that seems to be, filling that gap.
Oh dear.
And just due to its own nature, it is so bloody dangerous, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But yes, it's a massive issue, and just given the sheer amount of packaging that is flying about, and how many container loads every day of any kind of good come into America.
Yeah.
Trying to control this is a bit of a nightmare.
It certainly seems it.
The control, if anywhere, the control should actually happen in a place like China, and for one reason or another, they don't seem to be too keen.
I can't imagine why. Chinese, clearly a byword for quality and ethics, right? Okay.
Oh, very much so. Yes.
JVB for £20 thank you so much, says, Britisher, so this is for you. I understand this is off topic, but I adored your video on Edward Pellew. Vicariously, my chest swelled with a strange pride upon you describing his life and the trials he overcame. Thank you for your content, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Glad you liked it.
Artful Lodger says, train emoji. I don't know whether or not he's talking about the development of the British steam train here, or whether or not he's just referencing Thomas the Tank Engine. Both of which great British...
Trains are a big thing in Britain, there is no doubt about it.
Indeed. I mean, train spotters, certainly, as well.
There is almost a sort of train fetish.
A tretish.
A tretish, yes.
A tretish. We shall put it in B tier. Mince pies. Aaron Telford, this is. Mince pies are disgusting, in my honest opinion. Well, it's a good thing that your opinion doesn't matter, Aaron. I'm joking, of course. But no, I would say...
No, you're right. It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Not on this subject.
I'm trying to be generous to people who are generous to the stream, but at the same time, it's such a horrendous statement to make. I'm sorry, Aaron Telford, but please, educate your taste buds. Artful Lodger says...
You can skip the chip butties, but at least work on the mince pies.
Britisher, you can take this mid-digit and spin on it, and then you can go and take a chip butty and eat it. What happened to all
this generosity you claim to want to be showing?
You didn't give the stream £2. I don't know what else to say, unless your name happens to be Aaron Telford. Is this true? Okay. Artful Lodger says cucumber sandwiches.
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Solid.
Very, very stylish.
Very, light and airy with the crusts cut off usually. That Indian dude says the best part about Zulu was the Zulu war chants.
I think the best part about Zulu was the Welsh answering the Zulu war chants.
So there we go. We have some contention that I can't comment on because I haven't seen the bloody film.
It's the rousing delivery of Men of Harlech.
And finally, we have Tom of Loxley, who says, Hendo's is not from Leeds. Britisher is now dead to me.
It isn't?
No.
Where is Hendo's from, then?
Henderson's Relish? Let's see where it's actually from. Sheffield.
Oh yes. How could I make such a fundamental mistake? I've stepped into the Yorkshire wars, ladies and gentlemen.
You're a monster, Britisher.
I have declared something that is from Sheffield to be from Leeds. Yes, this is a major slip up. Yes, please, everybody, keep calm. Put down the torches and pitchforks. I apologise. I made an error.
They'll never let you live, Britisher. They'll never let you live it down.
Yes, I'll have to really be careful now.
That apologising to the mob is never the way to placate them. It always.
There is that. Yeah, these are Yorkshiremen we're talking about.
With that, I'm afraid it is time to end. But I'd like to very much thank the Britisher for coming on this journey through Great British
and being
staples.
Right about everything, as opposed to yourself.
and for having a myriad of strange opinions on various British products that he has either not tried or simply is wrong about because he isn't British himself. Matchstick has come in with a last second super chat to say, how much to get Rubber and Britisher to kidnap NSO and make him watch some movies? Well,
I think that's more than likely the only way we would ever get NSO to watch some movies, at least decent movies.
I've watched some. Just because none are coming to mind at this particular moment in time doesn't mean some. But somewhere in the region of 1,000 US, 1,000 British pounds. I could be convinced to be kidnapped. I don't know. There we go. All right, everybody. Thank you ever so much for watching. Thank you ever so much for coming along on this with us. Thank you for all your comments. If you're interested, please do check out the merch. We've made it especially with you guys in mind, obviously. And if you want to keep the show going, consider either joining the channel using the join button or subscribing on Subscribestar, Patreon, all that good stuff. Shameless shilling out of the way. Have a fantastic week. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Toodly pip.